In order to ensure the smooth execution of this evening's event, I would like to take the opportunity to remind you of the following housekeeping rules. Please ensure that you are on mute at all times while not directly contributing to the conversation. If you experience connectivity issues, please turn off your video. Please use the raise hands feature or the chat box for the question and answer segment. And finally, please be reminded that your messages will be public and on record. So please refrain from inappropriate and indecent language. I would now like to invite Dr. Reverend Bertrand Melbourne to lead us in prayer. Dr. Melbourne.
Is he on? Or is here in person? Well, no, we have to start. So, Mr. Scott, you're on. We know about every Jamaican can manage 10 jobs. So, it's up to the mic, Mr. Smith. The mic is right here. Yes.
Let us pray. Father, we ask you to bless this gathering. We ask that as we gather to hear from our Prime Minister, to hear from our Minister of Foreign Affairs and Foreign Trade, as they bring us up to date on the economy and matters concerning Jamaica. We ask you to continue to bless them and to guide them as they lead Jamaica. We ask as members of the diaspora that you will continue to guide our hands and to bless us. We ask you also to guide our captain of the ship, Her Excellency Audrey Marks, as she continues to be Jamaica's voice in these United States. Bless this Let's Connect as we continue to connect both at home and abroad. In Jesus' name we pray. Amen.
Amen. Good job. Thank you, Mr. Scott.
It now gives me great pleasure to welcome our host, Her Excellency Audrey Marks, Ambassador of Jamaica to the United States. Ambassador Marks, over to you.
Yes. Thank you so much, DCM, Lisa and Salmon. It is such a pleasure to once again, let's connect, where we have this opportunity to connect with members of the diaspora here in the United States and members of the diaspora actually joining from all over the world. And of course, Jamaicans at home who also sometimes join in. We are happy this evening that we have a hybrid format, and we welcome all of you here at the Embassy of Jamaica to join into this evening's episode. And we welcome all of those joining us online. Of course, this is our last Let's Connect for the year. And it's so very special that tonight we are joined by our Minister of Foreign Affairs and Foreign Trade, the Honorable Kamina Johnson-Smith, and no other than our Prime Minister, the Most Honorable Andrew Holness. You know, I was speaking with an executive at an airline recently and asking for sponsorship for, we like to give out prizes. So I asked for airline tickets to Jamaica. And I was explaining about Let's Connect. And she said, your Prime Minister or your ministers will sit and answer questions from anyone, any Jamaican? And I said, yes. She said, wow, you're practicing democracy. So, Prime Minister.
We take it for granted. Expected.
Yes, so I just want to say what a privilege it is for us to share like this without the leaders of our country. And it certainly is a pleasure to be here with you to close out 2024. It has been such a good year for all of us, and we'll hear more from our minister and prime minister. They're here in Washington, and we have had a very busy schedule. In fact, I had to call the technician and said, do you have any sort of filter? Because we're tired and we're going to look tired. Because we have been going non-stop from Monday. So we have had many late nights and early mornings, but this is our most special occasion because we get to share it with you. So tonight, the minister will start off with just a little overview, and then we'll go straight into, sorry? Oh, you're not?
I'll take questions.
So to just, we want to welcome you, Minister. Just say, I'll have you say a few words, and then we turn to the Prime Minister, and then the audience. It will be your time for us to start our interaction. Again, welcome everyone. And you can turn the camera every now and then so we can show our audience here at the embassy.
Directing from the
Yes.
host.
Over to you, Minister, to say a few words. Could you focus on the minister, please?
Thanks so much, Ambassador, and thank you not only for the amazing job that you have done in bringing these members of our community together this evening to sit with us, but the even more amazing job that you're doing as Ambassador of Jamaica to the United States of America. It's been a pleasure, I will share with you during this week, to experience how in every meeting and in every gathering, in every space, Ambassador is welcomed so warmly, so sincerely, and with such depth based on the relationships that has been built since she's been here. And this is how diplomacy works. It's how it's effective on behalf of countries. And I think it would be wonderful if we could just here quickly acknowledge the excellence that is this female ambassador. First female ambassador to Washington.
Thank you so much.
Although we all long for the day when we can stop celebrating our firsts, when we recognize them and they're so amazing, then I think it's important for us to celebrate it as well. So thanks for sharing my views on that. Of course, as you know, engagement with our diaspora, engagement with our Jamaican community is a critical part of our foreign policy. So we make sure that when we travel, we try to make time, as limited as it may be, we try to make time to meet with the diaspora. And I have myself met with diaspora in Guatemala, in Korea, in actually the year is a little bit of a blur in Japan as well. It's been a blur, but wherever we travel, we do try to make time, both Prime Minister and myself. And I think what was just being shared a while ago, that that sometimes we get used to things, but I never get used to it. I always enjoy it. I always feel energized by it, and I always feel inspired by I used the phrase earlier, but I have to use it again, the excellence that's demonstrated. We serve in every space and we shine in every space, whether it is that we're students, we're in business, we're in politics at the council level or at the congressional level, in the Senate. Wherever we are as Jamaicans, we stand out. And sometimes I feel terrible to be boastful about it. I don't want to be prideful about it, but I am so proud all the time. And so I think what's probably important is to celebrate it without arrogance, to recognize it so that the value is felt. Because you change the narrative. You change the narrative about Jamaica. There are a lot of people who they're too relaxed about speaking badly about our country. And they're too relaxed about speaking badly about each other. And the upliftment that you see in other communities and mutual reinforcement, sometimes we don't spend enough time on that. So I think that it is a good thing for us as a people, both at home and abroad. I think as we break through frontiers, as we overcome challenges, as we change the story of Jamaica, which I'm always so pleased to hear Prime Minister recount in our meetings, as we deliver more and better, fix the problems that have been broken for decades, pass laws that have been stuck in our system for decades, as we change what Jamaica is and build on who we are, I just think that wherever you are in the world, and I'm not sure if everyone who has signed in is from the American diaspora, I think it might be broader than that. So wherever you are in the world, I want to I won't do achievements, etc.
London is just telling us, I don't know how you're up
hello,
so
London,
late.
you should be in bed. But big up and bless up, as I know you like to say. No, Toronto, loving that you're with us. I hope you're bundled up warmly. And yeah, we're experiencing this very cold weather. When we just landed, I was very, again, boastfully sharing that we had brought the sun. Well, that didn't last. Didn't last very long. But I'm not going to do a long presentation on foreign affairs and foreign trade on the portfolio. It's been a very long day, so I prefer to be guided by questions. But I really just wanted to reinforce the fact that we as a people have so much to be proud of. And a lot of that pride can be expressed about each other. And as we welcome the next generation, hello, little ones, welcome. So we have all generations here today. You can't see them, but if Ambassador's instructions are followed and the room is panned, you're going to see the two little youngsters who just joined with their dad to spend the evening with us as well. Jamaica's a great country and we're a great people. We have challenges, but I think what is important is to always be committed to doing better, to fixing what needs to be fixed, so acknowledging where the challenges exist, but always to celebrate the wins and to build on them, because our greatness is beyond our size. And that again is something that we don't celebrate enough. And when it's seen by others, we're able to recognize it for what it is sometimes, more than when we look at ourselves. So I want to say to each and every Jamaican or Jamaican, or what we say for the British? It's not Jam Brits. That works. And Brit Jam, I think, is a brand. But we want to send love to you all. We're going to wish you season's greetings again, of course, and Merry Christmas when it comes. But I want to say how pleased we are that you joined us today for this last Let's Connect of the season, and how much we look forward to your questions, to answering them as best as possible, and to sharing perspectives and hearing yours. Thank you again for making time, for making the choice to be with us, those who are here and those who are online. And I look forward to a great evening of engagement with you. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Minister. And let me just return the compliment and say thank you so much for serving with such distinction as our first female foreign minister. Let us hear it for our beautiful. And of course, to take up the point of Jamaicans joining from all over. We are really, what's the term, a migratory people, because we have Jamaicans in every corner of the world. And you know, every now and then we have problems somewhere. And the good thing about that is that Jamaicans are really a resource everywhere. We have a great network, and we give God thanks for that. Well, now we turn to our important guest who is making time to be with us tonight. Our more important guest. Thank you. That deserves correction. My grammar is not so good. Our amazing Prime Minister of Jamaica, the most honorable Andrew Holness. We turn over to you.
Thank you, Ambassador. Allow me to join in the commendations for the work that you have done in representing our country and representing our people internationally. And, you do quite a fair bit at home as well. Yesterday, we had a dinner at which you could have easily been the guest of honor at the dinner, though you were the host. The attendees were quite impressed with your work, and I don't know if it is a silent movement to ensure that you stay on as ambassador. So we're very pleased with the work that you have done and how you have represented the community. As I survey the in-house audience, and I look at those who have joined us virtually online, first, let me wish you all a happy season. Well, let me just say Merry Christmas when it comes. Merry Christmas when it comes. These days, you try to be as politically correct as possible. But look, we've been grown up with saying Merry Christmas. Merry Christmas. Merry Christmas when it comes. I'm particularly looking forward to Christmas this year. I mean, I'm hoping to get a few days break. May not materialize, but I am looking forward to Christmas. But I don't take your presence for granted. It is pretty cold weather here, and you have come out in your numbers to be with me directly, personally, and I appreciate that. And it is always fascinating that wherever I go, wherever I travel, there is a community of Jamaicans who feel that it is their duty, their patriotic duty, to come out and represent, to identify themselves. You would be in a sea of foreigners, and you must show that I am Jamaican. So it's just an amazing sense of who we are and how proud we are. No, don't matter how we quarrel with each other and the contentions we have. We're very proud to be Jamaica. Jamaica is a brand, and it's a brand that is useful to all of us, particularly persons who are overseas. That brand helps to identify you. It helps to, in some instances, it's your protection. It's your means of access. And it is something that we should all value. We all benefit from the brand, and we all have the potential to contribute to the brand. And likewise, we all have the potential to take away from the brand. So the brand is our national patrimony, and we must protect it. Now, it is sometimes said, but quite profoundly put, by one of our excellent academics, Professor Emeritus at Harvard, Professor Orlando Patterson, that Jamaica is the confounding island. I don't know how many of you have read his book. I would encourage you to read his book. It is a very good synopsis of post-independence Jamaica and our challenges. And I wish to start my presentations there. So Jamaica is the little train that could. And we should have been, or we still can be, the train that did. For what our potential is, what our resources are, what our capacities are, we should have achieved much more than we have achieved. But having said that, we should also acknowledge that for what our challenges are, from what our historical struggles are, we have achieved a significant amount of which we can be proud. So those two extremes are the realities. We have achieved much, but we could achieve much more. So we are in what I like to think of as the the continual struggle for development. And we're not doing too badly these days. There are monumental challenges, but we have managed to overcome monumental challenges, but we have managed to overcome. At my recent party conference, I laid out a kind of new direction for Jamaica. When I took over the administration in 2016, the line of effort that the government would pursue could be described as securing Jamaica's economic independence. I'm not going to delve too much into that. Some of those points will come out later, I'm sure, with the questions you ask. But securing our economic independence was a priority. And that really meant repairing our country's debt situation, returning our country to growth, putting in a strong fiscal and monetary policy, doing deep institutional reforms to ensure that we can deliver employment, deliver infrastructure, deliver a social safety net, proper transportation system, proper garbage collection. All of those things are now in the works because I'm not saying we have solved the problem, but we have a solution that is in the works. It is working and it is delivering revenues on a consistent basis that we don't have to increase taxes. Can you imagine a government of Jamaica for the last 7 years that has not increased taxes? We take it for granted easily. With all the other things that occupy our mind or frustrate us, we take that very fundamental point for granted. But it is incontrovertible that it is the case. Jamaica has never been in a position to immediately recover from a shock. And you can just think about it, just reflect, whether it is Hurricane Gilbert, whether it is an oil price shock, whether it is the fallout in bauxite prices, whether it was FinSac, whatever it is, whether it is the 2008 financial crisis. In fact, in the 2008 financial crisis, we did not return to our 2009 GDP until 10 years after. After the pandemic, Jamaica recovered within a year. In fact, we are doing much better post-pandemic. Bear in mind, before the pandemic, our lowest unemployment rate was 6.5%. Post-pandemic, our lowest unemployment rate is 4.5%. That's the lowest ever in our history. Our debt is returning to the trajectory which we intended it to. We are now at 74%.
Coming from 150%.
And we need to repeat that. But the point I'm making is that the government has been successful in establishing Jamaica on the path to our economic independence. The economic independence is you would call this a kind of philosophical direction of the government. And maybe at another time I'll delve into what it means to be economically independent as a country. Jamaica is politically independent, but that political independence is not complete unless we can, in many ways, stand on our own 2 feet, recover from shocks, whether they be man-made or natural disasters. Our independence, economic independence, means that we can take care of the issues we face internally, whether it is to make sure we get the best education, have the best public order, take care of our environment and natural assets. And that's what we've been doing. But we have a new mission now. And as members of the diaspora, I want to share with you what is I wouldn't say new direction, because we're still on our path for economic dependence, but what is the parallel track that we're laying now, where we will be shifting attention and focus? And that is peace and productivity. peace and productivity. And what do we mean by peace? Jamaica is not at war. But we could equally argue that at times it would appear that we are not at peace, that there's just too many localized conflicts, internecine war, almost like feuds, which are costing lives. The violence has just pervaded the fabric of our society. It is becoming a feature of our brand. And we have to address it. We have to address this issue of violence. Now, we have dealt with violence before as a society. Some of you in this room, by virtue of just looking at your faces and making assumptions about your ages, would have been around in the 70s and 80s when a particular kind of violence took root in Jamaica, political violence. When our elections were marred by violence. Nowadays, we have elections almost seamlessly. Violence is not a feature anymore of our politics. And how did we do that? We passed legislation to manage our electoral process. We put in place the Electoral Office of Jamaica, the Electoral Commission of Jamaica. We passed laws to ensure that if violence was used in an election, we could easily void the elections. We took instrumental action to ensure that violence was not a feature of our political system anymore. And we were successful. And I use this example to say that if we can come together as a nation to treat this issue of violence, we can be successful in dealing with domestic violence, intimate partner violence, but more importantly, well, violence in parenting, violence in organized criminal activity. We can address this issue of socialized violence. And that is going to be a direction of the government. We are going to mobilize, coordinate, and direct resources towards this problem of violence in Jamaica. It means we are going to have to deal with things like hate speech. It's not a feature yet in the Jamaican society, but you in the diaspora, many of you live in society where speech that deliberately targets violence at a group or a person is treated within law. In Jamaica, there's really no such thing. We have to consider that. In Jamaica, sometimes the inviolability of the person, the physical person, is not protected as strongly as it should. You live in a society where you have to consider the physical being of the person and not violate it. You know, we believe it's easy to just touch people and to physically harm people. That has to be addressed. That's a part of the issue of treating with randomized violence, violence that accompanies sexual abuse, intimate partner violence. We also have to treat with how do we discipline our children? That is a touchy subject. There are many religious considerations for that. But I'm certain that the biblical rod did not necessarily prescribe a stick. And therefore, we have to consider how corporal punishment is controlled in our society. We already have laws controlling corporal punishment, certainly at the early childhood level. But throughout the society, this is something that we're going to need to contain. So all of these are things that we're studying. We are a democracy, so this will have to go through an elaborate process, an elongated process even, of social discourse, so that we can treat with it. And in the diaspora, I think you would have an incredible role to play in helping to guide the conversation back in Jamaica, as you would be able to share your own experience living in other societies that have sought to regulate violence and what it means and the benefits of it. I think you would have such an important role to play in talking to your family back in Jamaica about the importance of controlling violence and how controlling violence increases the well-being of all Jamaicans. So you would have that critical role. So the government was going to focus on that in a direct and deliberate way. The other pathway that we are establishing is the issue of productivity. Again, another confounding critique of Jamaica. You know, we have the fastest man and woman in the world. I only wish we could do business at the speed of Usain Bolt. The truth is that all of you here complain and would want it. But would you raise your voice in support of public service that is, I'm going to use my words carefully, that has KPIs? A public service that has performance management. Would you say that this is important for a society's economic independence? This is important for growth. This is important for an improvement in public service. And the diaspora has such an important role to play because you live in societies where you experience business at the speed of thought. And that kind of cross dialogue needs to happen so that the development of new frameworks for how we manage performance is not viewed as an imposition of a kind of, again, choosing my words carefully, as an imposition of trying to force production out of people. And I'm certain I'm communicating the idea that a new performance management could be looked upon in a negative way. But it is important if we're going to make the transition to the next level. All right, so we're right at this phase of takeoff. We're on the runway with our economic program. It's going well, but for it to be sustained, the country has to transition to another level where we deal with this issue of violence, which is destroying our peace. It's a social cost to violence. And then improve our productivity, because it is from our productivity that we're going to get increased wages, keep supporting infrastructure development, and sustain our peace. So those are two critical platforms that we have to be on. And that's where the new direction of the government is going to be. We're going to maintain our economic performance. That track of economic independence is ongoing. But we need to be on this track of peace and increased productivity. And to do all of this requires a partnership. It requires every Jamaican to be a partner.
At home and abroad.
At home and abroad. So I'm certain we've taken the time to identify the trajectory in such a way that even if you're not a supporter of the government, or you don't believe in the people who are leading the government, but at least the ideas must make sense and resonate with you. Because these are not ideas that are exclusive to one government. These are nationally important. So whoever is the government must deal with peace. They must deal with productivity, and they must maintain the pathway for economic independence. And that's what we're trying to do. So these are nationally important goals. And I think the diaspora will have a very important role. So I think I've talked enough, and I'm open for your questions.
Well, Prime Minister, thank you so much for that overview in terms of your policy direction in Jamaica. And I know coming out of that focus, that policy direction for peace and productivity, having laid the foundation for prosperity, your first P, and all of this for partnership, a fourth P. I know coming out of the focus, especially on peace, you decided on this trip to the United States and to Washington to start really aggressively pushing the dialogue for some quick action. And you have had some very successful and productive meetings so far at the Department of Navy, because Prime Minister will tell you we have 22 times our 22 times our land space in our maritime space. So sometimes it's very difficult to manage and monitor all of Jamaica if you include our maritime space, but it's part of how we can protect our borders and go for peace. So our first meeting was at the Department of Navy with the Secretary. We also had meetings at the White House yesterday. And today we have had a number of meetings with the chairman of various congressional committees, namely financial services, foreign affairs, ways and means, because all of these actions will take resources from the partnership. And we have also had meetings at the Department of Justice with the Attorney General and various team members, all looking at parts of what will be needed as we pursue this path of peace and productivity. So Prime Minister and Minister, maybe you'd like to share a bit on some of those conversations?
Well, our trip to the United States is part of our strategic mission to ensure that Jamaica remains front of mind in foreign policy for the United States. The United States is a critical partner for us. There are many threats emerging in the region, so it's important that Jamaica makes our position known, and we use our offices to communicate what those threats are, but more importantly, to reaffirm the partnership. So as Ambassador mentioned, we had a meeting with the Secretary of the Navy. We had a meeting with the National Security Advisor, Jake Sullivan, which went extremely well. The meeting with the Secretary of the Navy went exceptionally well as well. Then we met with critical committees of Congress, and then we met with the Attorney General and critical agencies under the ministry, under the Department of Justice. So it's all about the peace mission and the productivity mission. The productivity mission, it's the America's Trade and Investment Act, which we believe could have significant benefits for Jamaica. It's a new piece of legislation going through the American Congress, which we came to give our views on. And in terms of the peace side of this, we have prepared something called Plan Secure Jamaica. Plan Secure Jamaica is a comprehensive national security strategy for Jamaica, for which the United States is a significant partner. And we were here discussing some elements of that. And that Plan Secure Jamaica, it's very wide, starts with the human elements, the strategic assets that we would need. It deals with crime and violence. It deals with youth rehabilitation and diversion, all the elements. So it's quite comprehensive.
Thank you. Thank you, Prime Minister. Minister, did you want to add anything at this time, or do we go to questions? Okay. Well, we have an in-house audience and we have an audience online. So I'm going to ask that we get a few questions from online when you can just, you know, after about 3 questions from here and from in-house, we can also take some from those joining us in social media. So we'll start with Mr. Paul McFarlane. Haven't seen in a long time. Welcome back. I will start with you today. Yeah, we are asking you to unmute. Go ahead now.
Beautiful. Thank you, Ambassador. I missed your webinars. Thank you, Mr. Prime Minister, and your accompanies, whoever came with you. But thank you for your presentation.
Foreign Minister.
Foreign Minister. Sorry, Foreign Minister. Thank you both. The last time you was here, Mr. Prime Minister, I asked you a question about renewable energies. I want to switch and go straight into health. We hear that dengue fever is currently having problems in the island, and a few folks have died. Have you heard of a pharmaceutical called ivermectin?
Yes, it was a very well-vaunted drug during the COVID pandemic.
Well, more than just being a well-vaunted, it's, if you look at the record, the finest pharmaceutical ever created, credited with saving 500 million lives. 4 billion doses have been written. Only 16 persons have died associated with its use. So it's safer than aspirin, almost as safe as water. Now, in the medical literature, there's quite a few studies that show its efficacy against dengue fever and associated problems. I wonder if your medical director, Dr. Mackenzie, would take a look at those studies and look into using ivermectin as a treatment for dengue fever. Would you have a problem asking her to take a look?
You know, I am agnostic to any drugs, and I really don't know enough to give you an answer. But certainly, it recommends itself because so many persons have said it is a wonderful drug. People swear by it. I know that our medical professionals have looked at it. It's a big debate during the COVID period, and the decisions, I'm not recalling them right now, but I don't believe they were conclusive in favor of its use. But it is something that I'm certain that our medical professionals would advise us on as to whether or not it is effective against dengue. But for me personally, I take the advice of the professionals.
So thank you, Paul. And I will ask if there are any doctors here that you can give an opinion. And for now, we'll now move to, is that Andrew Sharp is next? Andrew Sharp.
Thank you so much, Ambassador, and thank you, Minister and Prime Minister. It is a pleasure again to hear of you doing this engagement and speaking about collaboration and engagement with the diaspora. I am reaching out to you because 2 questions, and my subject is pertaining to persons with disability. I'm a champion when it comes to person with disability. 2 questions I want to ask in terms of, one, your checks and balances in terms of response from your ministry. I know when you were elected, you said that you would keep a checks and balance on the ministry. We have reached out to your office and met with Minister Terrelong and had a great discussion. But up to today's date, we have not received a response. We currently work with 10 Caribbean countries, which we're supporting these Caribbean islands. And Ambassador, you're well aware of the work that I'm doing right across the region to advance the disability community, but we have not heard any response So my question is to you, and I know when you first was elected, you spoke about checks and balances of your ministry. I shouldn't be waiting 3 months to get a response from your ministry in terms of that. And the next question too, when we send donation to persons with disability and special needs school, everything is smoothly done. I've asked again and I keep asking, when will we sit down at a table to get clarity to explain the good and the bad in terms of donation going into Jamaica? I want to send more donation to Jamaica, but I'm having stress. Every time I pick it up, I'm having stress. I've asked for us to just sit down at the table so that we can look at it. And I hope your administration would waiver, like many other Caribbean countries, waiver for persons with disability, items that we're shipping to them. There should be no charge because we're getting them free. So hopefully your administration will address that in terms of waiver and working with us. And I know, Ambassador, I appreciate all the work that you're doing. And Minister, we spoke about that. And I'm extending the olive branch to support you guys with the Disability Act in terms of training for the sector, in terms of supporting the sector, since that's what you have just discussed about the partnership and relationship. So I just referring
Andrew,
it out to you.
Andrew, could you tell me which ministry you wrote to?
I had a meeting with Minister Tara Long.
Which is Foreign Affairs. So you said I have a ministry as well, you see, so which is the Ministry of Economic Growth and Job Creation, which is a quite separate ministry.
I think it was really saying your ministries. So in this case, it's Foreign Affairs. Okay, so Minister Johnson Smith will answer.
Sure, just to say, Andrew, thank you. First, let me start by thanking you for all the work that you do. You touch lives every day, and you are committed to making the world a better place by working with our most vulnerable. And this is something that I've commended you on personally, and I commend you again publicly in this environment. I'm not aware of the specific engagement with Minister Terry Long, but I give you my commitment that as soon as I return to Jamaica, I'll sit down with him about following up and responding to your inquiry. We did speak about the difficulties in terms of importing, and as a matter of fact, literally, the three of us were having a discussion not even 5 hours ago about how our system works for donations. We're speaking about both health and education. Net works very smoothly, but the health side doesn't seem to work as smoothly. And both seem to require some, in any event, some further examination of how we can make what is working well on the education side also work on health, and what needs to be fixed in respect of both. Whether we can find innovative solutions with the support of finance for that. So we understand the frustration when you want to give, and it's hard to give. And we've been speaking about this for years. I know that when I first became minister, it was much harder than it is now, but it doesn't mean that it is the best it can be. And if we do continue to try to work to make systems the best that we can, then we will get them to where we want to be. So I do give you the commitment that I will speak with Minister Terry Long, and we did say that we're going to have a discussion with finance about what adjustments that can be made to our systems for donations. So I can't promise you, the fiscal reforms that PM spoke about earlier came with a lot of pain and a lot of restrictions. So but maybe there are things that are in place that can be adjusted or revisited, or a timeline can be looked at. I do know from Minister Tufton directly, again, from a recent discussion, this is not something that we're removed from. It's something that is always a matter of discussion and concern. That significant changes have been made to the Health and Wellness Foundation to try to replicate the NET model. And I think maybe we do need a very.
That's as Andrew was saying, that it's smooth to do it through the net for the education, but for the health side might be a little bit more.
Specifications, etc., and the needs, the actual process does seem to require a little more.
You know, Minister, the people listening on, I'm sure will be very sympathetic to the view expressed by Andrew. And so why is it so difficult to give? You're giving something free and you're required to pay, and you have to jump through hoops. And I know there's great sympathy. And for the average person looking on, the logic isn't quite there as to why it is the way it is. Well, it is the way it is because of the fiscal, meaning the management of our public accounts and public financing, that we have to manage it in such a way that we don't leave holes and opportunities for leakage. So we must make sure that we have and capture all public revenue. And that is why we can say no new taxes, because we have managed to remove the possibilities of variability in revenues. And to do that, you have to have a straightforward and transparent system with very little exceptions. When you start to give waivers create waves in your revenue. One day they're up, the next day they're down. Generally, the trend is like this. So your revenues keep going down for good reason, because once you give a waiver for something, then somebody else will come and say, but you really should give me. Why do you give them? And you start a downward spiral. And so when we engaged in our IMF reforms to get to what we call fiscal discipline, a part of that was to set the number of waivers that we will give. In our system, we give 10 million Jamaican dollars a month in waiver. And that's it. So that way, we are certain of the impact of waivers on our revenues. And so it will affect persons giving. So some persons will give and they may get through because they are within that $10 million envelope. But once that envelope is filled, then everything else is treated as normal. Now, once we get to a point, now I'm not saying that this is going to happen quickly or tomorrow, but as we secure our economic independence, we can start to make variations. You would have seen one variation made, those of you who were paying attention to what was happening in Jamaica last week at our conference, where the Minister of Finance was able to announce that we would increase the threshold in small customs goods coming in. Now, think of it. We're going to give up revenue in order to do that. Why could we do this? Because our economic situation has improved. So I understand the frustration, and it's very difficult to explain it to someone who says, I'm giving, so why should I be paying? We get it all the time. I know Minister is at pains, but it's part of this process of securing our economic stability, our economic independence. And we keep giving back. We've given back for bus fares to maintain price stability recently. And we keep giving back. So the improvement in the economy is for the benefit of the people, and we have to be judicious in how we give it back. We are those who say, just spend, just give it back, just spend it on this, just do that. That is the road to destruction.
Okay.
And
So
Prime Minister,
no, just hold on, Prime Minister, no, while we can't run with it, so to speak, I think it's important that we give the diaspora a sense that this is going to be prioritized, because
No,
it's a
I've
common
just said that.
complaint.
That's what I'm saying.
Yes, I'm just reiterating that.
Look, the stronger we get,
yes,
more we can give back.
and
that
we
is
know
the
that you are
commitment we have.
giving back now. The government has been giving back, and so what we are asking is for it to be a prioritized give back.
There's no reason for the government to keep excess revenues, right? It is best when the revenues are in the pockets of the people benefit from it. But you have to do it in such a way that once you're at a level of revenue, you know you're not going to fall back again, right? So you make sure the institutions are strong, your economy is strong, and you can be certain of the revenue. That takes a little time. We're getting there.
All right, so now we thank you, Prime Minister and Minister. We will now go to turn to two ladies, and we recognize Winsome Radcliffe. I think Winsome is over there in Cayman, and Diana McIntyre Pike. I think you're in Jamaica. So I just look at two ladies, one from Jamaica, one from Cayman. Winsome?
Good evening. Good evening.
Good evening. Good
And
evening.
It's
Winsome.
a pleasure being here again. Can you hear me?
I think you have to stop moving though. Stay still so we can hear you, or else we have to come back to you.
Okay. Yes, good evening. It's a pleasure, of course, being here again, Ambassador Marks. Thanks for the great work you've been doing in hosting things like these for us to have a voice. And I will say here, I am truly proud of all of you, all three of you, whom, you know, in terms of how you have owned and honed your respective roles in serving Jamaica. So I do give credit there. I also like the fact, Minister Johnson, in terms of where you started with, you know, looking where you started in terms of the pride of Jamaica. Because one of the narratives, and particularly living here in Cayman, what I'm now hearing is all the greatness of Jamaica. Persons are now switching that, calling it Caribbean. So we need to look at owning our Jamaica brand, because a movement has started to change the good that we do to calling it Caribbean. But if the bad they're not calling Caribbean, we're branding it Jamaica. So I am not liking that direction that is going with what is Jamaica. And to you, Mr. Prime Minister, good work you're doing. I like the talk about peace in terms of looking at stemming the crime. But what I would look at coupling with that is pride. Because again, a nation who have pride in themselves, knowing who they are, will also help in terms of stemming the peace, because if you don't know who you are, and of course we have to start with the youth. And one of the greatest thing I've always looked at is putting more of a disciplinary measure in schools, similar to what the JDF go through. So expounding on maybe like the cadet, so persons learn discipline for their community. And the narrative of the government, I believe you may have some good things coming out, but how it comes out to the general public leave much to be wanted. Firstly, I will speak of the salary package, because living in the Cayman here, our paper just this week bandaged where the Cayman Prime Minister salary is just shy of the US Prime Minister's salary, and more than that of the British Prime Minister and the Canadian Prime Minister. And I say that because what was proposed in terms of an increased salary for ministers and the Prime Minister was needed. But when you're going to come to us with saying 400, that of course is going to put a block. What should have been highlighted was the number, because the Prime Minister's salary now, I'm making more than what the Prime Minister of Jamaica is making. That is, an insult because of the level of work you do. So for that, when it came out, you should have more work with a dollar value than the percentage, because the percentage rate in any sphere is not going to come over nicely. My second question now, again, we have come out with the garbage disposal going private. Now, I don't know what your thought process is. It may be good, but again, I believe the narrative in terms of why and how you're going to explain that, because I am not of the view for garbage disposal to go public, because there are certain facilities that our government is due to give to the people, and one of which is a garbage disposal. In terms of a heavy equipment like fridge and a car, those people pay for to dispose of privately, but your day-to-day garbage should remain with our government.
Okay, thank you so much, Winsome. You have given
So
us
Winsome,
quite a
let
bit.
me jump in quickly. It's very important to say this, that I did not take a salary increase. My salary remains at what it was, and it has been there for however long it has been. So I want to establish that. I didn't take it and then say I'm going to give it to something. I absolutely did not take any salary increase. Having said that, we live in a democratic country where it is almost impossible to control misinformation. So the government was very clear in being open and transparent in coming to Parliament and stating exactly what the increases were. If you went back and read what the Minister of Finance said in Parliament and what I said subsequently, it was all there. There is a general view, not just in Jamaica, but in all countries, where the remuneration of their elected leaders must be scrutinized, especially in countries where people feel that the service that they get is not up to the standard that they deserve and expect. And so there is going to be criticism. I have had to accept that increasing salaries within this context of the general view of people not being satisfied with output and service and mistrusting of their government will have significant political fallout. There is no question that would happen. And there's very little that you can do to try and spin it. And I have looked at other governments who have done it, and it is the same thing, if not worse. So let's take the country you're in Cayman. It is being made a public issue. When salaries were last increased for parliamentarians and politicians in 2002, it was a big issue. 21 years ago, a really big issue. The public has short memories. Very few people are taking the time to do the research. And as politicians, we take the time to do the research, we bring it to the public, but is the public in a mood to hear what you're saying? Is the public in a mood to receive it? Because at the point in time of the decision, the public may be angry. Over time, when people are able to look at the issues dispassionately, their views may change. What I had to do in order not to have the public upset be extended is to say, listen, I won't take the increase because I do understand why people are upset. I do understand. But at the same time, I also understand why it was important to give the increase. Because let's face it, let's take us out of the picture as politicians. Let's say I wasn't there and minister wasn't there, and a new set of politicians came in. They would still face the same condition of low-level pay impacting on their ability to fulfill their duties as public servants. It's a reality. And while we are upset with it, and I understand it, I have a duty as a person you elect to do what is in the best interest, even if it means that I'm going to lose votes for it. And that's just the reality.
So
that's the reality. So could we have done it better? I'm sure there's always room for improvement. I have certainly learned as to how best, but I believe in my heart that I've done the best thing for the interest of the country. As it relates to garbage collection, this is another challenge we face. Jamaica is a country, I've said this before, that if you were to ask people, what do you prefer? Do you prefer merit or do you prefer equity? Which would you choose? If someone were to get something because they merited it, or should they get it because it was fair that they get it? Which will you choose? It's rhetorical. Don't answer. Because not everything that you merit, it's fair that you get it. You may merit something, but someone may need it more. And in a country like Jamaica, where we don't have equal endowments, where inequality is a huge issue, we start off unequal. Equity is very important. So whenever a conversation comes up as to what should the government provide or should the private sector provide, the immediate perspective is that if the private sector provides it, people who deserve it by virtue of equity may not get it because the private sector is only going to provide it on the basis of merit, who can pay for it. And I think that this perspective of how government works has limited our possibilities for a very long period of time in our development. The private sector is not only there to provide services directly to the public, for the public to pay for it. There are ways in which a public good can be provided by the private sector that increases the public welfare. So I invite Winsome to consider. When telephone services came in, it was provided by who? Who remembered TOJ, Telecommunications of Jamaica?
JTC.
Or
Oh God, I just made it
JTC
myself.
first, right? Telephone company. Who remembers that? Who remembers that? Come on, who remembers? That's provided by government. So there are ways in which public services can be provided. So and what we should establish is that if there is a service that the public sector can provide without depriving anyone of the service, then the government should allow the private sector to provide it, and the government regulates it. And in some instances, it's the government that would pay. So what the challenge that the government faces is that government just does not have the capability to manage hundreds of garbage trucks. That's one. Secondly, the government sometimes just doesn't have the budget to buy the hundreds of garbage trucks that are needed. So maybe this is an enterprise that a private sector person who can gain the benefit of efficient management and has funds to invest, make an investment, and the government pays for it over time with less burden on the budget, and the public gets an improved service. So I don't want us to look at incorporating the private sector in the delivery of public service as a bad thing. You live in a country where the government rarely, if ever, provides a public service. The government contracts out almost everything to the private sector because it's very important. The private sector is an important part of the economic mission of independence. They're the ones who will hire the people, make the innovation. Governments don't make innovation.
Am I allowed to say, I think we got the point, Prime Minister. I want to make sure we get in Diana, right? So we can then get to members of the audience. I don't know if I should be.
All right, I tell you what, I won't answer any more questions. I'll leave it to me.
I don't know if I should call on someone from Jamaica. You're always on the Prime Minister with you, but Miss Diana, you're special. So I will ask you. Yeah. We'll give you an opportunity.
So much that you're giving me the opportunity, because I've always wanted to speak directly to the Prime Minister. I'm a passionate Jamaican, everybody knows that. And I live in Jamaica and I know what is going on. And I think it's very important that the Prime Minister understands that we have a number of NGOs in Jamaica and organizations, and that the government needs to be more facilitating government, because you can't do everything. But what you need to do is to know what each project is doing and be able to move forward. Now, we designed a project called Villages as Businesses, where we train communities to manage their community as a business and do a business plan, do a brochure, promotional brochure, or diaspora is our main partners, because they want to know what investment is required. And we're setting up a fund called the Community Tourism Fund, Fund, to be registered in North America. And we're moving forward. What we need is more support from the government for what we're doing. And you will know that it will help the country, because we have identified the environmental issues all over. Jamaica is in an environmental crisis right now. Our coastal areas are in trouble. We have 15% of our reefs left around the island. And the university report recommends that we need to put a man-made reef around the island so that we don't lose any beaches or any more of our beaches. We have lost some already. And we have a problem where sewage and garbage go into the sea, rivers are getting polluted and everything. People don't want to hear reality. The reality is Jamaica is not as clean as it used to be. And the garbage is being distributed all over the place. The garbage trucks are great, but we have a mentality that we have to change the people's mindset to stop throwing garbage all over the place. You're taking my guests on a tour and there's a garbage everywhere. They think that we're not a clean country. So it's all very well and good. So we're having all these tourists coming and visitors coming, but we cannot bring them into this situation. This infrastructure, the pothole and the manhole and everything else are going along with it. So all I have to say, Prime Minister, is that you have to have a serious conversation about infrastructure and what is happening in the country, and to give support to initiatives on the ground that is helping the country to move forward, because you cannot do it alone and your people can't do it alone. And then the final thing is the South Coast is in trouble, because the South Coast, the master plan said we were not going to make it be like the North Coast. We don't want 2,000 room hotels and so on. We want more boutique hotels, villas and so on, more community type of vacations, etc. But I understand that something is going to happen to Fund Hill, and I want you to check it out, Prime Minister. We don't want no 2,000 room hotel at Fund Hill. We want back our beach park, and also we want to have the prescribed areas like Cano Valley, which is supposed to be protected. The community think, or they've heard, and we want to make sure it's not true, that it is being sold to the Chinese. No, that cannot happen. That is an area that has to be protected. So we need to do a check of what is going on and keep us in touch with what is happening. But we're here for you, sir. We support you. We like what you're doing. We like your energy, but we need to have more dialogue with people like ourselves who are working very hard on the ground with communities and community tourism. And Jamaica has been branded the home of community tourism by the International Institute for Peace to Tourism. So it's an opportunity for us to reap the benefits, but we have to get the communities involved as entrepreneurs. And we do have a certified training in entrepreneurship, which is helping communities. Thank you, sir.
Sure. Thank you, and thank you for
Thank you,
being such
Diana.
a consistent advocate.
Let me
community
just
tourism.
say very quickly, I'm not aware of any plans to turn the South Coast into the North Coast. In fact, we are, like you, very cognizant that you have the South Coast. For those of you who know that area and who visit there, you know, look, that is valuable as it is. It is a gem, a lovely place that you don't want to disturb it. So you have to have development in the area that is respectful of the area. So there is no plan to convert the South Coast into a high intensity kind of low value kind of tourism. There are plans that are not yet definitive about putting in proper roads, and we're very careful about the type of road we put, because we don't want to put too much traffic in the area. So that's the plans that we have. There may be private plans for people who own lands in the area. I'm not aware of what those would be. I'm not recalling immediately any plans for Fund Hill. Fund Hill is a lovely property, but I'm not recalling any plans immediately for Fund Hill. Neither am I recalling any plans for any national environmental asset to be sold to any foreign country. So that I would just want to say that in terms of garbage collection, it is a most distressing thing. And the solution that we have come up with is a full suite. It has from garbage collection through to a landfill, through to conversion for recycling or waste to energy. It is going to take some time to implement. It is very expensive. The first part of the solution is to divest garbage collection so that garbage has some value to be collected. Because once the private sector is doing it and they're getting paid by what they collect, then they're going to make sure that they get all the garbage. And once that garbage has a market that becomes the input for something else, then if it is going to be converted into waste and that's feedstock, then whatever garbage you have before you throw it, somebody will catch it. I mean, I'm just being figurative, but that is the thinking that we believe will give the long-term solution to the problem. But nothing beats a change in mentality. We should not be disposing of garbage in the way in which we have been doing it. Bits of paper lying on the ground, I grew up with that. All of you grew up with that. Something went wrong somewhere.
Yeah. Thank you, Prime Minister. And let us we give commendation because I think Jamaica is one of the first countries in the world that banned plastic bags.
We were one of the first.
Yeah, so you know, we have been doing some good things and we support the environment. Let me just turn now to some questions from our in-house audience. Mr. Ian, you want to come up here? You had to raise your hand. You want to come up here? So, Emil, I'm just realizing the audience can't see the person speaking. This is the only camera you have there. Is it because the ministry don't have it? The ministry don't have enough money to put.
We are economical. We make the best of what we have.
Mr. Ian Edwards.
Thank you, Ambassador. Prime Minister, Foreign Affairs Minister, I wish I could have said a warmer Washington DC welcome. It is what it is. Just a couple of thoughts as the Prime Minister was outlining certain things. One, you mentioned about the economic progress being made. What would it take, because people have been asking this question, for a revaluation of the Jamaican currency upward to have a stronger, that's one.
You know, I mean, well, finish your question.
Okay, and there are concerns about, well, this is going to the Foreign Minister, the EU-ACP agreement and the fallout from that and the recriminations and all of that. That's one. And the last thing about the NIDS, they have the questions as to why the urgency of this.
Okay, so
Sure.
3 questions.
3 questions. All right, so let me take the foreign exchange question. Do you know that there are countries who want their currency to, you know, not to appreciate because it helps with their trade? So Jamaica, and then you're saying, you know, what would it take for us to appreciate the value or revalue our currency? Let me put it this way. Jamaica has long passed that. We do not revalue or devalue or depreciate our currency. Our currency is a free floating currency. Market conditions determine the rate of our currency. Of course, we, through the Bank of Jamaica, watch and we make sure that there are no erratic movements. But we have transitioned from that. I mean, I don't hear the Japanese complaining about the value of their yen or what it is, everybody relatively adjusts to what the price is. What we should ask ourselves now is how do we keep the currency stable? That the currency has to move, but you don't want it to move in erratic ways. And that is where our economic policy is. And it's very important that I say this to the wider Jamaican audience, that don't think of the currency in this way anymore. All right? Think of the currency in terms of stability. And you would judge your government on how the currency is stable. How do we get the currency stable and how do we get the currency strong? Let's start to have people demanding Jamaican dollars to buy Jamaican goods. Let's think about trade. Let's think about what the currency represents. The currency represents a store of value. Do people want to hold Jamaican dollars to store value? That is how you're going to see your currency revalue. So I'm really saying to the Jamaican people, stop thinking about the currency in the old way that we used to think of it, that the government could somehow artificially set the rate. There are real forces at play that we need to understand and master. Forces that come right back to productivity. Because it is what we produce and what we're able to export and what people demand from our products that will determine the value of our dollar.
So we need to produce more.
We're trying to avoid the subject because we just believe that somehow it's a snap of a finger, some kind of magic, and the money exists. That's not the case. We have to produce.
Okay,
Right? For too long, we've been thinking this way, and that is what makes bad policy. Because we vote for bad policy because we're thinking in ways that the world doesn't run like that anymore. Now, you raised a question about needs. National identification system is for the benefit of the Jamaican people. Whatever the conspiracies and the fears and so forth may be, it is important that we are able to identify all our citizens. That does not invade the privacy of the citizen. The privacy of the citizen is guaranteed by the state. And we have put in place all the laws. Recently, we have just put in place the Data Protection Act, which means that we have a data commissioner, which means that any firm that handles data for the citizen must register and follow certain specific laws, just as in the European Union, just as in here, to protect your rights. But you all want to be able to transact digitally.
In the US,
seamlessly,
the national security.
quickly. Well, this is a part of it. And we need to know who you are to provide you with services, to plan for you. We get this all the time. We budget, and then people turn up and say, what about me? You didn't remember me? Well, and that's the issue of PATH. Those of you who know the PATH program, that there are many people out there who should be on PATH, but they're not, because this process of going through and identifying.
That's
Anyway,
the Social
again,
Security, Social Security
PATH
program
Social Security.
here, with
Yes.
PATH program there. And it's interesting because here, the first thing someone wants when they get to the United States is to get their Social Security number.
It's unbelievable.
And they will give every information the US government wants to get their Social
all
Security
of you have
number.
phones. Every day you're giving your.
So what is good to know? What is
to
good
Apple
to
and
know?
Google and
What is good to know? Well, I think the concern is, can we trust our government with this, with our personal information? And I think Prime Minister, hearing the work that is being done to ensure that we can trust to give our data to the government and to certain and to private sector companies is what people really want to know, because they trust that the US government will not use their information to their detriment when they go asking for the Social Security number. So I think we want to have the same trust level, and the work that is being done, and Minister, you can speak to it, especially now.
what we have done.
Yes,
We've put
I
in
have
place
put
a
in
data
place,
protection
yes.
act. There's a data commissioner.
Yeah.
Every entity that
Yeah.
handles your information in Jamaica is now in the process of registering with that data commissioner. There are laws and penalties for breaching the law regarding the privacy and security of your data. We have taken that very serious.
Yes, it's really a lot of work. As somebody who's associated with the private sector companies, you have asked us to put in a lot of work.
That's what it takes to give guarantee that your data will be secure.
Protected. Minister?
I'm not sure if you can hear me, but I'm
Yes, yeah.
Can you hear me? Emil? So I don't have to.
Okay.
All right. Okay. Thanks, Dan. Just to share that yeah, and I found the way you phrased your question quite interesting, because you said, what's the rush? When the national identification system is something that has been discussed for more than 2 decades. It's been 40 years.
That's from, what is it?
It's crossed administrations. It has crossed prime ministers. It has really been something that has been a service that the Jamaican people have been deprived of for far too long. Because I think somewhere along the way in the discourse, and again, I think a lot of misinformation facilitated on social media developed fears that eclipsed the improvements in service delivery and the benefits of a national ID system, the reasons that people want a social security number because of the access to services that it gives you. Somewhere along the way, the benefits were lost. The fact that people we all continue to be upset by the number of documents that people ask you for when you go to open a bank account, if you're going to, this is diaspora, but if you go into courts to buy a small settee, you know, Jamaicans who are listening from what they ask you for, how many bills that prove that you're the owner, and it can't be your mother bill, it must have your name on it, so that young professionals are impacted because they haven't built up the type of documentary network. The JPs that you have to go on in the community, there's no JP. So, and the JP go church on Saturday and he's not available today, but you had the appointment and you need to go to King's. The nightmare in service delivery to our people that has been normalized in a way, as has the costing of it been normalized and accepted as what is. NIDS is going to unlock a lot of that, because what it's about is improving how government delivers service. So it's not rush. That's the first thing. A lot of effort has been put into this, the Data Protection Act, which is the EU standards. And in fact, there's been a 6-month extension, Ambassador, for the private sector to register, just for registration, during which, while you're still, so it's coming to effect as was expected on this month, but the actual registration process in terms of enforcement, there's a moratorium on that. The encryption, double encryption systems that have been introduced, the technology generally, to ensure that it is secure and that data is secure. The consent mechanisms, trust me, when it actually starts to deliver, it will be welcomed and people will recognize what it is that we have really been working at. Sure. On Samoa, on the ACP EU agreement. So the first thing is that EU and the ACP, which is 79 countries, have had agreements for more than 40 years. We've gone through Lomé 1, 2, 3, 4, and the Cotonou Agreement, which expired, which is our main development partnership agreement. The EU, which is our largest grant funder and has provided us with more than 1.2 million euros in development funding, and grant funding in particular, is a key partner in achieving Jamaica's development goals. The Cotonou partnership expired in 2020. We agreed to have transitional arrangements while we negotiated the Samoa agreement. And this is the 79 countries of the ACP, negotiating with the 27 countries of the EU. This was to ensure that there was a mechanism that continued to support developing countries within Africa, Caribbean, and the Pacific on a structured mechanism that allowed the EU to continue to provide support and developmental support. The Cotonou Agreement, sorry, just a little distracting, but the Cotonou Agreement overlaps quite a bit with the Samoa Agreement. It doesn't introduce a lot which is new. The structure is slightly different because it looks at regional areas. The payment structure is a little different because it introduces something called an indiki. But much of what is in there, which has been circulated as problematic, language of concern, where we speak about, for example, sex education, comprehensive sex education. These are things that were in schools. These were there before. And these are things which are implemented by the government of Jamaica in a way which is culturally appropriate for us, age appropriate for us, and in accordance with our laws and our constitution.
Just to be clear, I think I have to, sorry to be jumping at, because I think.
But I'm going to go back. I'm going to go back here to the full the position on constitutionality and our domestic laws and our norms. Jamaica, for those persons who have concerns about any word that is picked out and taken out of context of an agreement which is more than 400 pages, more than 200 articles, and has to be interpreted within an entire body of domestic and international law, including reservations which Jamaica would have entered on the international scene decades ago. We are a dualist state, which means that we're a state which does not automatically incorporate terms of international treaties. It means that there is something that government must do by act of legislation or otherwise to implement those agreements. So when we sign to an agreement, we're signing to a mechanism which exists to provide funding. There'll probably be further arrangements that are agreed with the EIB, etc. But what is done is always checked for constitutionality, for alignment with our laws, and we do not agree to anything that is going to change our laws or norms. We have a partnership with the EU that has existed for years, and this is intended to be an upgrade. Their projects are guided by our priorities, meaning Vision 2030, Jamaica's national development plan to make Jamaica the place to live, raise families, and do business by 2030. Those priorities are the priorities that guide our engagement in the programs and projects funded by the EU.
All right.
So I just want to wrap to say that there is nothing to fear. And I think that we could have shared more information. It is primarily a trade and development agreement. There are some paragraphs, articles in there that deal with human rights and democracy and governance, etc., but nothing that affects our constitution or our laws. So I want you to be assured that there's this agreement, like every other one that we negotiate, has the benefit of years of experience in technical support at the ministry. And we do take very strong care in the processes that we engage in, including consultation with ministries, departments, agencies, and stakeholders. All right, so it would be great to get the facts.
Absolutely. In fact, that's where I'm going.
Yeah.
Other question. because I've
You-
heard these
you-
things
you
like
don't-
Public education on these issues.
Yeah.
How vigorous is this?
It hasn't been very vigorous
All right.
at all.
So we need to kind of
Sure.
wrap on that question.
So I can discuss further,
Yeah.
but I don't know if you want to say something
Yeah.
further.
I think this is what you call a teaching.
Yeah, teachable moment.
It's a teachable moment.
Yes.
but it's not
Teachable
teachable. Anyway, look, when we talk about our economic independence,
Yes.
this is what it is about. So Jamaica is still a country that depends upon foreign aid. The arguments over all of this is that aid comes with compromises. And there are those within our society that feel that the agreement will cause a compromise of our values, our fundamental principles, our laws. Are we then economically independent? That's why we must never take our eyes off that goal of having a strong economy, so that there can be no question about a compromise. But I take the stand that even when I am poor, I will never compromise our values, our laws, our constitution. That's the stance. And so be assured, and you would have seen this happen time and time again, that as we engage, if there is ever any attempt to blur what our principal line is, Jamaica stands firm, unequivocal, unequivocating on our moral lines. And we can say that without fear. of contradiction. So we must engage with our European partners. They do understand what our position is. They have their position, we respect their position, and we have reinforced our position so they can understand it and respect it, but we must engage. And as we engage smartly and strategically, and we keep a political eye on the issues, and we must engage our population, because there's always a very high distrust, a high
misinformation.
So loads of misinformation. And so we engage, we allow them to say to us what they feel. We are their servants and we hear, but remember, we serve all the people and we have to look at the bigger picture and find what is in our best interest. But rest assured that what defines us as Jamaicans, we can't compromise that.
Thank you. I think we got that teachable moment. We are.
Can I share something, Ambassador? I'm sorry, I know you want to get on and we have a question waiting, but I do want to share that we were reminded when we were going through, the ministry had an engagement with faith-based groups and civil society groups just last week. A session that was scheduled for 2, ran for 4, and we really had some good discussions, allowing people to share their views and sharing facts. And we had situations where, people would stand and say, but, the European Parliament passed a resolution that said X, Y, and Z. But unless we answered to remind that European Parliament resolutions such as those actually don't even bind the European states, they don't operate as law. So that to think that that resolution would bind us, it's really not representing the truth. And it's unfortunate when people state these things as fact, taking a bit of information from here and a bit of information from there. And it really is very difficult to overcome all of it, because every time you explain one thing, then something else is put forward. And it is really, it's quite a difficult situation. But I really wanted to share that Jamaica played a major role in the negotiations. And I was reminded that when I was in the seat, they would schedule meetings. This is the 79 countries of the ACP. And unless I was available, they wouldn't have the meeting, because they knew that if Jamaica was in the seat, they would get a position that's informed, that's balanced, one that explores every technical concern, and that we would be strong and unequivocal in a position. And we had changes made. So I want to assure you that this was a difficult negotiation, and one which was viewed as beneficial for 79 developing countries, not only Jamaica. And even as it is that we're examining the circumstances, making sure that persons with concerns have those concerns addressed and feel a bit more comfortable about how we're going forward, that this is a beneficial agreement for Jamaica as we work through our partnership with the EU. So it has never been a big stick approach by them. I want to reiterate that funding is guided by our policies and our programs, which are designed by us. And they have even started to help in ways with that they have never helped before. They never had a health cooperation.
Let's move to our economic independence.
Yeah, but
So we have quite a few questions and we're running on time. So I would thank you, Minister. I think we know that the needs came about from when Wapi killed Philo. So that's the term. Yeah. It's on the books.
Philip died. I don't know if Wapi killed him.
And we know that the government is not signing off on any agreement that violates our constitution. That's the bottom line. So we need to, but the dialogue, we take the point that must continue the public engagement.
Minister
so that
is very passionate on it, because Minister spent a lot of time
negotiating it.
Negotiating it to make sure, because we understand the sensitivities, just to make sure.
Yes. All right. So thank you both for your extensive explanation of those.
It's very important that we do it here, right?
No, really, it's a good comment I'm making this. We have Dr. Goldo. No, no, yes, yes, go ahead.
Minister, Prime Minister, and our beloved Ambassador. I think you said it well when you started. This is in fact democracy in action. And just to hear the discussions, the teachable moments, I think I can say for most of us in the diaspora, that home is always going to be home. Today, I had a discussion with Dr. Mansing, as well as the Dean for the College of, for the Medical School in UWI. We are going to Howard University, and we're going to have some of our senior medical students to do the clinical rotations in the Caribbean.
Ah,
And in fact of projects in 26 islands increase the workforce for HIV and hepatitis. So we're actually doing that. About three months ago, Congressman Benny Thompson asked me to chair his inaugural resilience project, climate resilience. And it's looking at emergency disaster preparedness. 1 in every 4 natural disasters over the past 20 years occurred in the Caribbean. And we need a workforce of emergency disaster preparedness. And I'm wondering, we have this project in the 26 islands, and it's something we can replicate as it relates to emergency disaster workforce. And I'm wondering if that's an area, Prime Minister, that you think our university would work with you on developing for our region.
The answer is obvious, yes.
and
I mean, look, we congratulate Howard University for the continued high caliber output that you secure, and for being so accommodating to our Jamaicans who have come to study there. Again, I say thank you.
And we are doing a lot on resilience, and including our 3-layer Prime Minister. You want to talk about our 3 layers of funding protection that have been so innovative?
I mean, I think we've talked enough of
Yes, yes. So we did it. In fact, today and yesterday, many of our meetings were looking at beefing up Jamaica's ability to respond to climate disasters, not only for Jamaica, but for the region. So that's part of our discussion. And yes, I just wanted to say it is a priority. Come, just get from a young lady.
Hello, my name is Diana Chambers, and I'm a Howard University student. And I was listening keenly to what Mr. Prime Minister was saying, and he said that he had 2 paths parallel to economic independence that he plans to focus on. One was peace and one was productivity. In terms of peace, you mentioned a lot about plans that you have in place, but I don't know how transparent it can be, because I know a lot of us in the room care about all the crime that's been happening in Jamaica, and we want to make our country a safer place. So what exactly are some of the plans that you have in place? And second of all, you talked about economic independence and how Jamaica recovered very well from COVID-19, and that's why you're able to do pay increases for the government, which I understand. Low income does affect public servants' ability to do their jobs. But also teachers who are public servants have been speaking about this issue as well. And I'm wondering, what will it take for them to get their voices heard and a pay increase as well?
Yeah, thank you.
No, this is a problem. It's an information
job,
right? Now, you may not know this, but I was a teacher. And so I have a special place and very sympathetic to teachers. And as Minister of Education and worked with the JTA for those years in just trying to secure the best that we can for teachers. When I was Minister of Education during that time, teachers got the largest salary increase at that time. I mean, we were the ones who fulfilled bringing teachers up to 80% of market. So my administration has a record in ensuring that our teachers get the best possible deal. If it were up to me alone, meaning that if I didn't have to have other considerations, of course, teachers would get a massive increase, because I think they're the ones who have the greatest capabilities to transform the country. It's without question. We don't debate those points. teachers have actually gotten a substantial pay increase. The average would be above 20%. And some have gotten as high as 100%, 150, 160%. Yes, in fact, some principals and senior teachers and so forth would have gotten significant increases, without question. Public, no matter how we put this out to the public is of a mindset because of, yeah, look, it is a season of discontent, and in negotiations, nobody's going to say, hey, I'm satisfied, I got the pay. Nobody's going to say that. But if you wanted to find out what the truthful situation is, you could go on the Ministry of Finance's website and look at the pay increases for all. So I'd suggest you do that and then come back to me and rephrase your question. Right? You said transparency.
Yeah.
It's there. Just go and look it up. Right? Don't listen to what people post and say. Just go on the website and look at what the facts are. Right? So I would definitely. I will always admit to that we should, as much as we can as a country, improve our productivity so we can pay our teachers. So we accept that point. In terms of what are the plans for peace, you probably would notice that we have been speaking about this issue of dealing with crime and dealing with violence. We have just now recoined the strategy to put that in peace. It's hard to make a distinction for the listening public between crime and violence because we put both things together. So the strategy to deal with crime also has strategies to deal with violence, but there are significant national security strategies that seek to deal with crime. That is the intention to break the law, the act of breaking the law. And sometimes people break the law with violence, the use of violence. But not every use of violence is a criminal act. And the challenge that we face in our society is that we are using violence in regular, everyday activity. We're using violence when we're correcting our children, violence in interpersonal relationships, violence in how we talk to each other, and how we understand what violence is. We have normalized it, so we've accepted it. So a part of the strategy is to treat with that element of it. Now, other countries have gone through trying to treat with violence. We have dealt with it in our electoral system. Rwanda would have had to deal with it for their genocide, and other countries. South Africa would have had to deal with it in the period coming out of apartheid. And there are various kind of national initiatives that they have had to do. For example, in South Africa, they went through a process of peace, of truth and reconciliation, where people who committed acts of violence had to come and talk about it. There's a kind of cathartic process in Rwanda. They also had their local courts that treated with it. So what I have done so far in this regard is we've put together a National Commission on Violence Prevention, headed by Professor Sams Vaughan, a renowned pediatrician and researcher. And she was head of our Early Childhood Commission. She's well respected internationally in this field. And we're now looking right across government at all the programs we have, because we have several programs that treat with violence, or agencies that have a mandate to treat with violence. And we're going to pull them together in one ministry and have a targeted approach. So there will be some form of truth and reconciliation. That may not be the name of it, but there has to be a process in which we bring communities together to discuss this issue of violence. That's just a discussion, but to get people to understand that the way in which we behave has to change. And then that has to be supported by legislative changes. As I mentioned some things earlier, hate speech, we have to bring the understanding that the use of language that promotes violence has an impact on our quality of life. And you live in a society where you have to recognize this. And it improves the quality of life for everyone.
Thank you, Prime Minister. I think we're
On the plan side, for transparency, again, that if you just Google Plan Secure Jamaica, which is the plan
But that, yeah.
But what you'll find is the summary taken from Prime Minister's 2017-18 budget speech, where there's a full summary of the 10 areas: violence and crime, public order, corruption, community safety, territorial integrity, crisis response and resilience, justice, cyber defense, critical infrastructure protection, economic security. And in there, the issue of prevention, youth, unattached youth, rehabilitation, etc. That will be under under more than one section, but it is a part of a whole cycle, not only violence and not only crime, but Plan Secure Jamaica deals with all of the elements of what is needed to secure Jamaica in the true sense of what is required in a modern society. And the issue of peace is quite a separate line of effort, as you've heard from Prime Minister. So I just wanted to share the difference there, because I know people have been discussing, if there's a Ministry of National Security, why are you talking about dealing with peace? But it's actually an entirely different focus. And but I wanted you to share that some of the work is documented, even if it's not all of the details, and there might be, additional refinements that would have happened since 2019, but it gives you an excellent understanding. And that's, of course, for everyone who's listening, that just Google Plan Secure Jamaica, and you'll find a great GIS summary that will share with you a really excellent understanding of what's being done.
right. So we're trying to have equity. We did 4 Zoom persons, and now we have a 4th person in the audience, and it's another young lady. There are no young men who have raised their hands. Let me see. No. All right, another young lady. Go ahead, please.
Hi, good day. My name is Katiana Anderson. I'm a psychology major, human development minor that currently attends Howard University. My question was similar to my peers. It was regarding peace. My question was, you spoke about, Prime Minister, you spoke about the sense in which you want to increase the happiness and the peace in Jamaica you want to increase the peace in Jamaica by providing rehabilitation for youth. I want to target the police force and ways in which the police force can be trained better in protecting, so that the violence rate in Jamaica will decrease, and that youth will feel more protected in Jamaica.
Thank you so much. Thank you.
I would be the first to tell you that the JCF of today is a totally different JCF of 10 years ago. It is a whole different JCF. The transition has not been an easy one. It has meant that the government has had to make massive investments in the JCF, which includes their training. Human rights is now a discrete subject in the training of the JCF. I'm not saying the JCF is perfect, but the JCF, it is on its way, right? Because the leadership of the force accepts that this is an important part of a professional security force. And I'm saying human rights in its broadest sense, to protect the vulnerable, to ensure that diversity is protected, to ensure that we appreciate the mental health of the people that we're dealing with. So at the level of the leadership of the force, I'm satisfied. Now it's a 12, 13,000 force. Some of them come from an era where this was not the case. The new ones come from the society where these things may not be the case, but the institution is becoming stronger, and the institution will ensure that there is that quality of service delivery.
Sorry, I thought you had wanted to speak, and I was saying you could take your son up, but it's okay. Oh, Kingston's question, and I like the name, Kingston. All right, I think I see Prime Minister, no, we told you we'll finish at 9, but we don't get you and Minister very often. So we are going on a little bit longer than 9 tonight because we have in the audience we have two other persons who would like to ask questions, and we have a couple more persons online. So can we just take 4 more questions?
I'm sure.
So let us, and I see someone with your namesake there, Heather Holness. Maybe she just wants to say hi. Heather, you want to? And let me also recognize so many of our diaspora leaders. I see our honored consuls from Atlanta, Dr. Elaine Brand from Philadelphia, Chris Chaplin, and I see quite a few of our diaspora leaders. We'll come back to you. I think Heather wants to ask her a question.
Yes.
Go ahead, Heather.
Good night, guys. Good night.
Or make your comment.
Holness,
Are you
yes.
a relative?
A
We're
Joe
not hearing.
Jones, a wholeness is a wholeness, right?
On mute.
It's on mute. I'm sorry. Can you hear me?
All right. In the meanwhile, you have your hands up. Please come. All right, we're running on time now. Please come. Please come. Please come. Yeah.
Well, both of you should
Just come. Let's
ask
come.
questions, yeah.
All right. Let me know if Heather is not able to speak at the same time. Go ahead.
Okay, hi.
We can go back to Heather. Let us focus on this young lady for now. Go ahead.
Hi, it's a pleasure to speak with Prime Minister, Ambassador, and Prime Minister. My name is Christopher Clark. I'm a biology and criminology double major chemistry minor from Jamaica, and I go to Howard. Okay, so going on your point of securing economic independence for Jamaica, my query is particularly to our Jamaican students who are studying abroad poses challenges, particularly in terms of financial support. So currently the options for student loans are restricted to Jamaican tertiary institutions, and there is a scarcity of scholarships available for a foreign institution. The Howard Scholarship exemplified by J1 program is limited and leaves numerous students with financial need. Moreover, the constraints on working and limited internship opportunities for Jamaican students studying abroad exacerbates for financial strain. Many students arriving for higher education find it difficult to complete their 4-year college journey due to financial struggles, with the ability to cover the further expense, which is crucial, but sustaining financial stability for the remaining years is poses a formidable hurdle. The issue is particularly pressing for individuals with financial stability on those that are dependent on their parents. In my case, where I'm dependent on my single mother, who's she's a senior teacher in Jamaica. And I'm going on my point where somebody said, my fellow Jamaican peers said that pay increase for teachers, and for her, she's a senior teacher, and her increase is like only 20%. So on that point, and what can be done to address the challenges to facilitate sustainable solutions for Jamaican students pursuing higher education overseas who are trying to promote the Jamaican culture?
Yes. All right, can I just ask something before you go? You know, about 5 years ago, we started a scholarship program focused mainly on Howard students because I recognize the difficulties so many of you were having. J1, and are you a recipient of J1 scholarships?
No.
So on that scholarship note, can we speak right after? Can you get her number just on the scholarships? Because I think the last event that we had, we gave out 25 scholarships. I remember one medical student, I think she got about $800,000 at the event that Prime Minister you supported. So to finish medical school. So we are doing intervention just by, and we actually started with Howard. We're now Howard University, we're now doing other universities, but we have a focus through J1 of supporting Howard students. So you need to find out more about it. So let us get your information. I think Prime Minister and Minister, they have answered the question on the salary increase. And Prime Minister did not, the public sector reform, pay reform program, and every public sector is being impacted positively. Not everyone will at the level that will make it easy to support a child abroad, with, going to school. But there's now an effort to have increases in the public sector for everyone. And I just want to just expand on the point that the Prime Minister made earlier. For many years, when our debt to GDP was over 100%, and you heard it was a couple of years ago, 10 years ago, it was at 150% to GDP. There's nothing left over to invest in the country, in our human resources, in our education, in our health. Now, as we are moving the debt to GDP down, what that really translates to is money being freed up to start doing some of these programs, paying our teachers better, paying our entire public sector better. And part of the public sector reform also include the parliamentarians and the ministers. So it's a whole program that is being done. So
your question is valid.
so I know, but
appreciate
yeah, I
your-
don't care. Let me just finish the point. So I'm just saying to you that the government is making an effort, and we want to speak with you right after we the scholarship program. Please, Barrister.
No, I mean,
Go
it's
ahead.
important that you bring this
Yeah.
situation
Yeah.
to the attention of the country. And many students who are facing grave difficulties in accessing tertiary education. But you would immediately recognize that we could not open the student loan to fund overseas studies. That would be to the detriment of local universities, because the cost of overseas universities relative to the cost of local universities is significant. It's far more. But having said that, there are some things that the government is doing. The government is sponsoring, for example, the Marcus Garvey scholarships, where we are sponsoring Jamaicans to study overseas to come back to work in the public sector. And we would have to be very careful when we do sponsor overseas studies. How do we secure the benefit for the taxpayers of Jamaica? Right, that's something that we would have to consider very carefully. Right, we have to be very careful. Because we would want you to come back and serve. We would want the benefit of your studies when we do that. Personally, I do focus a lot on tertiary education, and I do sponsor a number of students through several avenues for tertiary. And when I do travel, I always through the ambassador or through our consul generals, put on events, and the resources from that go towards funding scholarships such as the J1 and Jamaica's Promise and others. So we do our bit, right? But it won't be enough to do for everyone. But we are increasing the avenues for sponsorship that we have.
So Emile, and also the OS scholarships, we want to make sure she knows about those too. Yes. All right. So thank you for bringing that to our attention. Please go ahead. Yes, yes. Did you'll check right after for the two online persons? Go ahead.
Hi, good. Thank you so much, Prime Minister, Your Excellency. Thank you so much. My name is Michelle Tolanila. I'm the Global Jamaican Diaspora Council representative for the Northeast. And I have questions, but all of my people know that I'm here and they have sent me questions.
Okay.
So I'm going to forego my questions and just give you 3 tonight. The first one was from Donald Longmore. He says, I host a radio program that focuses on children and their future aspirations. I asked all of them, what would they tell the Prime Minister if they had the opportunity to meet? All of them talked about getting rid of crimes and provide opportunities for students. What are your safer policies that will be in place to protect our children? So that's one. And then the second one, because I know you can do 3 at one time, I've been watching you. The Jaja Foundation purchased an ambulance in Dubai and donated it to Jamaica. There's a fee of US $20,000 to clear it. They want to know how the Jamaican government can assist in that right now, today, not tomorrow. Thank you very much. And the last one that they sent is, it says, you stress over the years about making sure our children are free from hunger and poverty. What are your plans in place on eliminating hunger for all school children? Thank you.
That's good questions. Thank you so much.
I'll turn them over to Minister Johnson.
You know, the issue of ambulance donations has been a real challenge, and I can't say how many meetings I've been in to share and remind diaspora members that when we went into the IMF program, the rule was that there would be no waivers allowed for vehicles. So there would, and this was because if you allowed, then people would exploit and they would send a van with and put a defibrillator in it and say ambulance, and then it was a revenue control, more broadly stated as Prime Minister did earlier, but there was a revenue control mechanism and a fraud control issue because of how motor vehicles are treated. So we're always at pains to say that it's important to make the arrangement that not only goes through the Health and Wellness Foundation, but that you have arrangements with a partner to deal with the fees that can't be waived, that aspect that can't be waived. So it's something that we can look to see maybe if there is a partner organization that may be willing to work with so that we can facilitate, but it's not a government mechanism that's available right now, unless we can get it into that waiver window, which is unlikely right now. And since the question was asked for today, not tomorrow, that's what we can do today, not tomorrow. But we did say earlier that we're going to look back at the issue generally, and that we will do.
Okay. Is the ambulance on its way?
I think it's in Jamaica right now.
It's in Jamaica.
Yes,
Okay.
it just needs to be cleared.
Yeah.
You could take a note of it. We'll take a note of it.
Thanks, Sarah.
We'll take a note of it.
That's probably the easiest way. You also raised the issue of food and children. You want to speak about the school feeding program?
No, you could go.
So there's a lot that's being done in respect of ensuring that children, especially on the PAD program, so our most vulnerable children, that they get a hot meal at schools. And in fact, what we have tried to do is move the feeding program. School feeding program used to be 3 days at primary school, and what would happen is children would come only on those 3 days from the most vulnerable families. So we have moved it to 5 days. So that's one of the things that we're doing. We're expanding our school farm program, so that this is something that we're working on with the FAO, so that we're empowering schools to provide not only food, but healthy food for their children, or for the children at schools. This is an ongoing program. Ministry of Agriculture working with Ministry of Education. I know Ministry of Education is also looking at how to ensure that there is more food available to more students. But it's a challenging area, but one which is an area of focus. We know that hungry belly don't learn, and that's a problem. So it is something that we have been working on for some time. The move from 3 to 5 was significant in cost and in impact. But beyond that, it's something that's worked on usually with focus through PAF stipends that are managed by the schools. So that's school feeding. And the other thing was safety and security for children.
Right.
So that is part of our general program of safety, but we also have a national strategic action plan for the prevention, and it's a very long name. But it is essentially an interministerial committee that looks across the piece at the role of national security, justice, entertainment, gender and culture, and sports, health and wellness, as well as even foreign affairs is on that committee for the international partnership aspect, where we seek to bring in expertise and partnership from the Pathfinder program, which is a UN-run child safety but child protection program. It's multifaceted, trying to close the gaps between the programs and projects that exist and fall away, often run by NGOs but have limited lifelines and timelines, and ministry programs and policies that are more sustainable, and how we can ensure that both work together so that we have less children falling through the cracks. Right. In respect of CPFSA, what we've done is we have merged the Office of the Children's Registry and the Child Development Agency to become the Child CPFSA, Child Protection and Family Services Agency. And we have implemented a software management system, so to allow for case management, because before it was manual. So files which represent children and families, if a file was lost, the implications were horrendous. So we now have a case management system that allows for tracking and assignment to case officers and better accountability in terms of follow-up on cases and issues. We're promoting more family life retention, so less state care, more family, more support to foster families and foster parents. And for those of you who know people at home or who may be willing to support, there's the usual Christmas program, which is not usual, it's fairly new, but where families are encouraged to take a child home for the holidays, so that they come and spend time with their family for at least two weeks. What often happens from that is that a relationship develops that gets into fostering and sometimes adoption. So that is, please encourage families to apply to the CPFSA if they, have a spare room, a child is gone away to college and they're, they still have the energy to deal with, with parenting and all that it requires, but they can share the love and joy and give a child respite from and offer encouragement. Even if they're not going to commit to a full fostering program, it is beneficial and does work very well. So that is something. But there's so many things that we're doing in that space and continue to do. It's thank you for raising it, because children don't always get opportunities
here. I think our messaging is what's important for us to get it. So thank you so much.
Thank you so much. Thank you. I'm so sorry. We are not going to be able to come back to online. So we are going to just have the last two questions because you both came up. That's one extra Prime Minister. One.
They're really glowering on the ambassadors.
One extra question. And they braved the cold to come out here tonight. So we're going to give that the two last questions right here. Please go ahead. But for those online, please put your questions and comments in the chat so we can transcribe them and get them to the Prime Minister and the Minister, and make sure we get back answers to you on our next Let's Connect, or just connect to you, just communicate with you directly. Please go ahead.
Good night, everyone. My name is Asha Richards, the Northeast USA representative of the Global Jamaica Diaspora Youth Council. And I'm not sure if I can say recent again, but a recent Columbia University graduate with a master's in public administration and development practice. And I had 3 questions, one was answered. But my first question, which kind of piggybacks off of what other youth had said, well, I have my ideas, and the Youth Council definitely has some plans for next year. I'm curious to what you guys envision as ways that diaspora youth, especially 2nd, 3rd, and 4th generations, who have a great love of Jamaica and have plenty of ideas, can contribute to the advancement of Jamaica, especially considering many are students, many are early career professionals. Even myself, I'm still job searching despite graduating in May. So how can diaspora youth build Jamaica and the Jamaican brand? And my second question, which is mostly towards Minister Johnson Smith. Jamaica is a leader in geopolitics in the Caribbean. And I personally would like to commend you on your work in regards to Haiti and other situations that have been going on. Now, I recognize that this is an issue that is ongoing, and honestly, things are going as we speak, and I respect if you can't give an answer right now, but I would like to ask, what is Jamaica's stance on the tensions between Guyana and Venezuela?
Okay. Thank you for both questions. Let me just get the last question, and so we can just have a wrap up after this. Yes.
Good night. I'm Holness. I'm an oil and gas attorney. I represent nuclear companies as well. Probably my first old girl. Back to school in Jamaica. But I'm really concerned about energy security in Jamaica. I work with oil and gas companies every day and nuclear companies. I really want to know what the nuclear strategy is or alternative energy strategy is in
That's your
Jamaica
question.
for the future.
Yeah,
Thank you.
thank you so much. So Minister and then Prime Minister.
Sure.
And then you could also wrap up at that time. And Prime Minister will wrap up after he answers question.
No problem at all. I actually spoke in the Senate on Friday on the Guyana-Venezuela issue. In that context, welcoming the ruling of the ICJ, which unanimously found on this application for provisional measures. That is, for those who don't know, Venezuela has actually, Guyana and Venezuela actually have a case before the ICJ to determine make a final determination on the borders of Guyana, which Venezuela is contesting and Guyana is holding to. Yeah, Venezuela is claiming that it's entitled to a region called the Essequibo, which is about 2/3 of the country of Guyana. The ICJ found unanimously that Venezuela, which has said that that it was planning to have a referendum, which asked several questions, which essentially would have gone beyond the process that's in the ICJ and would have essentially asserted that they are entitled to Guyanese territory. ICJ found that they should take no such action, that both parties shouldn't aggravate the situation, paraphrasing loosely clearly, and that that Venezuela in particular should not seek to take any action that would disturb the effective control which is now currently being exercised by Guyana. Jamaica stands in support of that position and continues to hope for a peaceful resolution of the issue within international law and as determined by the ICJ. The matter was sent to the ICJ by the UN years ago. Venezuela has not acknowledged the jurisdiction of the ICJ in that matter, but it is they have been present, and we continue to hope that calmer heads will prevail and that the circumstance, which does seem to be becoming more tense and more frictional, that they can be solved. You would probably have seen in the press that the matter is to go before the Security Council on Friday. CARICOM heads will also be meeting on Friday to discuss the issue. And we will hear from President Ali at that time and also hear what would have come of the UN Security Council meeting. So I share that Jamaica stands with Guyana. We have long before this issue materialized in this way within the Commonwealth and within other fora, within the OAS, etc. We've always supported the sovereignty, territorial integrity of Guyana, as we do for all countries, and the ability to protect same. So that is our position.
First question.
The ability of youth to contribute. I think we need a full session on that with the council because there are practical things to consider. As you say, students and looking for jobs and concerned with those issues, but having a deep desire to build Jamaica. How do we build out? The council was established to harness that energy, to harness ideas, and to look at how to build a pathway into government so that ideas don't live and die in your heart, but are translated into policymakers and into parliamentary action. So the issue is how we're able to better mobilize, how to organize the thought process and the actual translation process into government activity. Twinning with Jamaican youth is one way that we're looking at, but also looking at more direct paths which exist with the Ministry of Foreign Affairs and Foreign Trade. So it's an area in which work is needed, but I think the establishment of the council and the enthusiasm with which it's been met sets a good platform now that we're beyond COVID, having lost 2 years.
Okay.
So
very, very quickly, because we've really extended. You've been such a wonderful audience. You've stuck with us and you've listened intently, and by observing the faces, you have not lost interest. I'm not going to prompt any more questions. And I want to thank our online audience as well. We've been very, very attentive. Let me just say on the Venezuela issue. Oh, you're just standing there, right? All right, quickly.
Yes, thank you, Excellency. So I missed my flight from New York PM. I just have one question. I was in Jamaica a couple weeks ago. And I'd like to personally brief you just for 2 minutes after privately on what I discussed there. If that's okay.
Sure. Now, let me just say on the Venezuelan matter. You know, sometimes we're criticized heavily at home for our foreign policy. But we have been very consistent in standing up for our principles. And we have been very consistent in ensuring that our foreign policy reflects not just the principles that we hold strong to, but also our national interests. So we believe firmly in the territorial integrity of countries. And we could never support any country that violates the territorial integrity of another country. That's in our national interest as a small island developing state. So whenever that happens, we speak out strongly against that. We believe in the sovereignty of a country and non-intervention in the affairs of a country, in the internal affairs of a country. When that happens, we speak out strongly against that. And Jamaica's voice has been consistent and loud in this regard and respected internationally. We also believe in the right of a country to defend itself if attacked, right? And we obviously believe in preserving life and securing human rights. And any action that is taken by any country should be proportionate and considerate of preserving life. And we have been very clear in this regard. And I'll be attending a meeting on Friday of CARICOM heads where we will be discussing this Guyana matter. And as I've said earlier on when we started, that there are so many threats in the region, and Jamaica is trying to build capacity so that we can be a good, strong partner in ensuring peace in the Caribbean. All right, in terms of energy, it's a good place to close. So I know you asked a question because you would have heard me say that Jamaica must explore nuclear energy. Not many persons know this, but Jamaica does have a very small nuclear reactor. And nuclear science is not just for energy, it's for medicine, it's to help in agriculture, all kinds of things nuclear science is used for. But for us to have a nuclear energy industry, we need to first of all build out the human and technical capacity. So we have started to explore with our international partners how we can start to build this out. We already have the nucleus of this at the University of the West Indies with iSense, right? And we're going to seek to expand that to develop the capabilities, the human capabilities, technical capabilities. Our interest, however, is really in small modular nuclear plants. The technology has advanced significantly. Well, you are in the industry, you would know. The science has advanced. It's a little bit more cost effective now, and it's far more safer than it was before. Our interest is to have this as it's not a renewable. They don't classify it in America as renewables, but other countries classify it as renewables. But it's clean. It's clean, and it gives you firm capacity. If you ask me, what would be the single most important change in our economic structure that would catapult us forward? And that is if we were able to first of all, if we were able to reduce the cost of energy, but if we were able to have the cost of energy stable. Jamaica is susceptible to volatile energy prices. When the cost of energy increases in the United States and you have a spike, the president of the United States might say, we will release some of our strategic reserves. And your price comes down. What is the Prime Minister of Jamaica going to say? You have to stick with that high price. And the challenge is that you have price size, the price of energy is sticky. Once it increases, it's not going to go back down immediately to the level where it was before, and it is likely to stay there and continue to move from that point. So we have to be thinking in the long term, how do we insulate ourselves from volatile carbon fuels? And one way to do it is to invest heavily in renewables, which we are doing. But the renewables are intermittent. So you need to stabilize your grid with firm capacity. And one way to do that is having a diverse mix of stable energy, of which nuclear could be one, pumped hydro storage is another, hydro by itself another. So that's what we're thinking. So with that, on energy, we'll wrap up, and I say thank you to all of you who have come and participated. I certainly enjoyed myself. I want to thank you. You've asked some very difficult questions, and maybe I've talked a bit too much, but you've given me a good opportunity to address some issues. I hope I've been able to dispel some concerns and make things a little clearer for you, and to give you a sense of direction as to where Jamaica is going. And I thank you for your loyalty and your support, and continue being the great Jamaicans that you are.
Thank you so much, Prime Minister, for you cannot over talk because we want to hear so much of what you're doing and just to hear about Jamaica. So we thank you for taking the time and for giving, really thoughtful, comprehensive answers. It's really appreciated. I can see that from all our members, both here in the embassy and online. We had some prizes to give away. We got so into the discussions that for those persons who had questions, who had their hands up, who did not get a chance, please make a note of them, Emil. Please make a note of those persons so we can give some prize. We have hotels and flights. Or we can wait until the next.
No. They were very good. The prizes.
So we need to make a note of all the courses we didn't get to online, because I want to encourage your continued participation, and we appreciate you and we appreciate your patience and the way that you connect on all matters Jamaica. So again, thank you all so much for coming out, both in person and online on social media. And we look forward to another discussion on Let's Connect. Let's now just give a round of applause to our Prime Minister and Minister.
You said, let's connect live in front of the studio audience here at the Embassy of Jamaica.
All right.
Thank you so much.
Thank you. All right. So